Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again come.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane. Are we on? We are? All right. Good. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane. We've got so much going on back there today that folks would rather be in there, I think, than in here. But you're going to get a chance, for sure. But first, we do want to mention our mission to join together to create a nourishing liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world, or in short, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice. Welcome to each and every one of you, as always, to this place, to this community. We embrace and appreciate all that you bring with you, all of your uniqueness, your unique beliefs, background, lifestyle, experiences. This includes those who are among our regular members who hear me say this every Sunday, as well as those who might be joining us more recently, or even for the first time today. You're equally as embraced and appreciated for who you are. I'm going to give you an opportunity to greet one another in just a few moments, but first, I do have a few special announcements. There is a lot going on in the back, so I hope you'll take time to visit all of the tables during our social hour. We've got some important things going on. One, we're still, those who are in support of Initiative 735 for a constitutional amendment which would effectively overturn the Citizens United decision calling corporations persons and money-free speech, is having trouble getting all the signatures it needs to make the ballot. So there's a table back there where you can find, if you haven't filled out the or signed the petition yet, you can do so if you're interested in doing so. But also, you can find out how you might be able to help gather some of the signatures needed. And there's our folks back there in the corner. Jim's raising his hands. Also, we have the sharing tree to help sponsor a child or family member this holiday season. And also, we are looking for folks to help provide meals to the children of, help me out with the school again, Balboa Elementary, during the holiday season. So there's a table back there for that as well as some other stuff going on. So please be sure and check that out. Also want to say thanks to all of you for what turned out to be a very successful community auction this year. We raised $16,800, which is an important amount. This is our largest single fundraiser of the year outside of our pledge campaign. So thanks to everyone who contributed, everyone who helped organize it, and everyone who, of course, were able to purchase auction items, making this such a success. I want to specifically name, and I often get in trouble for doing this, naming folks and then leaving some out, but Marianne Soltis, Lee Dominy, Lorraine Heath and Candace Smith, who were on the organizing committee that made this year such a success. Thank you to all of you for your hard work. They are asking, one way you can thank them is to volunteer to help put this together next year. So somebody should be in the back. You can see one of them during our social hour if you're interested in volunteering to help with that fun and important event. Now, I also want to welcome those of you who are watching our service online this morning. Good morning. Probably not a lot of you, because we just got this installed yesterday and nobody knows about it except Dan Ekrit, who's at home sick. Good to see you, Dan. And we'll be working to get the word out. But this is a very exciting day in our congregation because it helps us really to extend our community, to reach out to others, to folks who sometimes can't make it, members who can't make it anymore, and to folks who are far away and don't have access to a Unitarian Universalist community. We're here for you. We're glad that you're with us, and we're going to be building on this technology. And there are lots of folks to thank for making this happen. One, of course, I thank the congregation for letting me make it happen, something I've wanted for a long time. But also, I want to thank Dave and Millie Roberts, Wayne Atwood, Dale and Nancy Avery, and Bob and Sonny Cook, who actually donated generously to really make this project happen. It's not over yet. We are streaming today. In fact, if your cell phones are on vibrate, you can go to sundaystreams.com/go/UUCS, and you can see us streaming right now. There is a several minute delay though, so don't listen to it. And then hopefully next week we'll actually be streaming live in real time into our chapel. So folks who need to get away from the noise, or if you know is a crying room, or for whatever purpose you want a smaller setting, you'll be able to go back there as well. So lots more to do on this project, but I want to thank all of those who really helped make it happen, including Dan Ekrit, Dan Schaefer, Dave Fish, who's back there working the sound booth today, for working so hard over the past few weeks and this weekend in particular, wiring the place so we could make this happen. Most of those cables are invisible, so they don't impact the beauty of this space. So thanks to all of them. And I especially have to thank a young man named Jason Chapman. Jason is the facilities director at First UU Portland. And Dan Ekrit and I went there a few months ago to see what Portland was doing with this technology, given they were written up in our UU World magazine. Met Jason for the tour, who actually is the person who put that together for them. And we said, is there any way you would consider coming to Spokane to help us set something like this up, and we will pay you beans. And we actually did that. Peggy made garbanzo beans last night, so we fulfilled our promise. But anyway, he has spent weeks just putting this plan together and getting us the equipment details right down to where we can purchase it and how much it's going to cost. And then he came this weekend to help us install it. Has been working around the clock. So that's Jason back there in the control booth. One of the nicest geeks you will ever meet. So please be sure and meet him after the service and thank him. Jason, thank you again so much for being here. So with all of that said, let's take a few moments to greet one another. As always, say hi to those that you know and love. Make some new friends today. If you're joining us for the first time, please don't be shy. We're very glad you're here. Thank you. And again, there'll be more opportunity to hang out after our service, as always, during our social hour, so everyone is invited to stay for that if you can. For now, we're going to move forward with our service by lighting our chalice, the symbol of our faith, the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame, I hear some individual uniqueness out there somewhere. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
Inspired by the title of the sermon today, I selected several poems to read from a book by Cynthia Rylant, God Got a Dog. The first one is, God woke up, and he was groggy, so he got a nice cup of coffee and went to sit under an apple tree. He sat there drinking his coffee, listening to the birds, when all of a sudden it hit him. He was happy. God was happy, and he wished there was just someone to see it. He'd gotten such a bad rap all these years for being pissed off all the time, and he really wasn't. Maybe a little cranky, but here he was, happy, mellow yellow. The birds were singing, and he was at peace. Buddha told him it could be this way, but he never really believed it until now. Life really was easier sitting under a tree. The second one, God wrote a poem. No, not that one. Everyone thinks she wrote that one, but she didn't. She's a better writer than that. Those guys just went on, and did they bother to edit? No. But when you know, you mention a name and you're in. So they said, I didn't write it. God wrote it. A sure way to get out of revising. But God wrote her own book. She wrote it for one little boy, just one. She read it to the boy at bedtime because the boy couldn't sleep. So God read him a book. The boy grew up. He became a writer. Which one? Not telling. The last one, God got cable. And for a week watched nothing but. Didn't see the comet, didn't see the hurricane. Missed that baby being born entirely. Just watched cable. Funny thing is, he liked it. He knew he wasn't supposed to. All those girls crying about their boyfriends, all those track meets, all that soap and toothpaste. He liked it. He couldn't help it. Then Gabriel came over with a deck of cards, and next thing you know, they played poker. They played for 4 weeks straight. Gabriel's beard nearly as long as God's, and corn chips all over the place. And what God decided was that he liked not cable, not poker, but a break. Even now and then, even God needs a break.
Well, first, I want you to know something this morning. We have our guest pianist here today. She's one of our candidates for our pianist job, and her name is Rita Huber. Rita, would you stand? Yes. And we're going to sing what I think is kind of a fun thing this morning. It's a gospel waltz. It is in your turquoise hymnal, so grab one, share if you need to around. It's number 1026. And I think you'll get the hang of it really fast. There's a short intro, but it's kind of swingy. So if you would stand as you're willing and able to sing If Every Woman in the World. 2. If every woman in the world had her mind set on freedom, if every woman in the world dreamed a sweet dream of peace, if every woman of every nation, young and old, each generation, held her hand out in the name of love, there would be no more war. If every man in the world had his mind set on freedom, if every brother stood with brother as a witness for peace, if every man of every nation, young and old, each generation, held his hands out in the name of love, there would be no more war. If every leader in the world shared a vision of freedom, if every leader in the world shared a sweet dream of peace, if every leader of every nation worked for justice and liberation, holding hands out in the name of love, there would be no more war. If every nation in the world set a true course for freedom, if every nation raised its children in a culture of peace, if all our sons and all our daughters reached in friendship across the waters, refusing to be enemies, there would be no more war.
If you're a young folk, don't sit down. Come on up. I've got more poems about God. Come on up. Even if you're young at heart, I need you right down here in front of me. Oh, good. Somebody's eager. That's even better. Wow, we have a lot of visitors today. Come on up. Hey, Luke, where's your hat? Yay! That's terrific. All right, come and sit down. Wherever you're comfortable. Hey, Sophia. Good to see you. Do you remember the name of this book? Who remembers it? Say it.
God got a dog.
Got a dog. Well, the first poem I'm going to read to you is God Went Skating. Now, did you ever hear of God going skating before? Well, guess what? Now you're going to hear about it. God went skating. He loved it. He wasn't very good at it. He fell 20 times. Have you ever fallen 20 times when you went skating? Wow. But God always bounces back. Cool, said God as he whooshed past the old ladies. That would be me trying to skate. He felt invincible. He knew he was invincible, but he didn't always feel that way. Not every day. God made some friends on skates. God thought they were way cool. He was proud of them, proud that they flew their spirits down the alleys and the boardwalks and the streets like angels. They were, you know, and they hadn't forgotten. All right, have you ever written a fan letter to somebody you really liked? Have you ever thought about it? I've written a fan letter, but I wrote a fan letter to an author. God wrote a fan letter. What do you think? Who did he write it to?
It skates.
All right, let's find out. God wrote a fan letter to this country music singer. A country music singer he liked. God rarely writes fan letters, so he figured the singer would make a big deal out of this. He figured he'd get an autographed photo or something, but she never wrote back. Nothing. So he wrote her again, and he signed it, God. Really? Nothing. Funny, he wrote one last time. He told her how much he liked her singing, how he had her concert video, which he played over and over and over. Good, George. And how, if she wanted, he could answer her prayers. Well, one at least. And finally, she wrote back. Dear God, I pray you will get a life. Well, thought God, just what did she mean by that? I have a last one to read, and it's from the title, God Got a Dog. She never meant to. She liked dogs. She liked them ever since she was a kid. But she didn't think she had time for a dog now. She was always working. And dogs needed so much attention. God didn't know if she could take being needed by one more thing. But she saw this dog out by the tracks, and it was hungry and cold and lonely, and God realized she'd made that dog somehow. Somehow she was responsible, though she knew logically that she had only set the world on its course. She couldn't be blamed for everything. But she saw this dog and she felt bad. And so she took it home and she named it Ernie. And so now God has someone to keep her feet warm at night. Shall we sing them out? Y'all know where you're going. You may go. We now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which sustains this community and its mission to the larger world.
Thank you, Rita. We're going to now kindle our candles of care for those who are most on our hearts and minds, as we do each Sunday. I don't have any specific candles to mention right now regarding members of our congregation, but before we go into that period of silence and invitation for you to name some specific folks that are on your hearts and minds, I do want to acknowledge the most recent tragedies regarding gun violence in our nation, which seems to be a mindless, senseless, needless, almost daily occurrence these days, which continues to grieve us all. Having a moment of silence almost feels inappropriate, given that there are some in our government who think that's the only damn thing that you do. But I did want to let us as a community go into that place of grief, knowing that we are activists who will do more than just sit quietly, but certainly it feels appropriate. So I'm going to ring our gong once, and then I'll ring it again, and at that point you'll be welcome to name others, as is our tradition on Sunday mornings as well. Those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion.
Please get comfortable for our meditation. Let us open our minds and hearts to the place of quiet, to the silent prayer for the healing of pain and the soft, gentle coming of love.
Despite the title of my message this morning, Dirty Rotten Jokes, Humor in an Age of PC, it's not a very funny sermon. So I thought I should at least give you a few jokes this morning, and I'm going to read, therefore, from a book called The Church Where People Laugh, and it is a book of Unitarian Universalist jokes. I know, it's hard to believe. It actually is the least funny joke book I've ever read. But there's like three lines in here that are pretty good, so I'll read those, and then you don't have to worry about buying it yourself. Okay, a student in a UU Sunday school told her teacher that she had gone to a Lutheran church over the summer. "How did you like it?" asked the teacher. "Oh, it was pretty neat," she said, "except the Lutherans took all our songs and changed the words." The children in a UU church school were drawing pictures. The teacher asked one of the children, "What are you drawing a picture of?" "I'm drawing a picture of God." "But nobody knows what God looks like," objected the teacher. "They will when I get done with my picture." And finally, "What did you talk about in Sunday school today?" Mama asked. "Cannibalism," said Latricia. "Cannibalism? Was your teacher for it or against it?" Latricia: "She said we had to decide for ourselves." Thanks again, Rita. So I consider laughter to be one of life's guilty pleasures, which is why it sometimes is accompanied by blushing, especially in response to a dirty joke. Dirty jokes, usually sexual in nature, touch upon many of the taboos that we're not supposed to talk about, just as rotten jokes make light of issues that we're only supposed to take seriously. So we blush a little when we laugh at them, or else react with complete disgust and no laughter at all. Sometimes we even shame the joke tellers for violating our taboos by touching upon those socially and culturally inappropriate subjects. For example, now I'm not actually going to tell a politically incorrect joke. I'm just kidding. If I were performing in a nightclub, I might give an example, but you're not going to get any politically incorrect jokes here today. Because in honesty, I'm afraid. I'm afraid to tell them. Even if just to illustrate a point. Even in a place among friends, among whom I feel safe saying just about anything. This is so because I don't wish to offend anybody. But as a Unitarian Universalist, I'm also uneasy about not feeling safe to say what's on my mind. And it is precisely this tension between being sensitive to others and freedom of expression that compels me to address humor in our politically correct age. This issue is huge right now, in case you haven't noticed, especially among some comedians who are finding themselves stifled, not by conservatives, but by liberals and progressives. In fact, Bill Maher, of all people, has recently threatened to start voting Republican. He says, because I can't stand being on the same side as those humorless, politically incorrect word I'm not comfortable saying. You can imagine. He's also called political correctness lazy liberalism, in which scolding has become a substitute for actually doing something. Maher, you may recall, is still sore because last December, some students at UC Berkeley protested his appearance as their 2014 commencement speaker because of comments that he made on his HBO show, Real Time with Bill Maher, regarding Islam. It's the only religion that acts like the mafia when expletive, that will kill you if you say the wrong thing, draw the wrong picture, or write the wrong book. Those protesting his presence said his comments were blatantly bigoted and racist, that his various statements on various religions and cultures are dangerous and offensive rhetoric, and that some of his satirical comments are nothing more than hate speech. A month later, two brothers, members of a radical Muslim group, entered the offices of Charlie Hebdo in Paris, killing 11 people and wounding 11 others because the paper had drawn a cartoon of Muhammad. Comedian Jerry Seinfeld has also been making a lot of news lately for speaking out against political correctness, especially on college campuses, saying when PC students throw out words like racist, sexist, and prejudice, they don't know what the hell they're talking about. He's also called PC creepy and says it's going to ruin comedy. In a very intelligent response to Mr. Seinfeld, published in the Huffington Post, Anthony Bertreau, a student at San Diego State, says it isn't so much that college students are too politically correct, whatever your definition of that concept is. It's that comedy in our progressive society today can no longer afford to be crass or provocative for the sake of being offensive. Sexist humor and racist humor can no longer exist in comedy because these concepts are based on archaic ideals that have perpetuated injustice against minorities in the past. I think Bertreau makes an excellent point. that humor must evolve with our changing social values and circumstances, and I am glad to live in an age when most people no longer find those Polish jokes or dumb blonde jokes that I grew up hearing funny or appropriate to tell. But I also wonder who gets to decide what appropriate humor is and isn't, and when something's funny and when it's not. I'm a big fan of South Park, for example. Talk about a guilty pleasure. For the past 19 years, South Park has been the most politically incorrect show in the history of television, featuring racist, sexist, homophobic characters, regularly stereotyping marginalized populations, making fun at the expense of others, and making light of some of our most pressing concerns and issues. There's no cultural taboo that South Park writers have not been willing to trample upon. I almost feel dirty even bringing it up. Let alone admitting that it's the only show ever that makes me laugh every time I watch it, even when I'm alone, which is all the time because Peggy won't watch it with me. And that's saying a lot because laughing is a social phenomenon. We usually don't laugh when we're by ourselves, even when we do find something funny. This season, South Park is focusing entirely on the issue of political correctness. The only time in its long history it has devoted an entire season to just one topic. During the season opener, two older men are standing behind a fence looking at the havoc being wreaked at a PC frat house. Well, looks like things are getting all PC again, one of them says. The other asks, how long do you think this will last? It lasted about 6 years last time, he responded. We've got about 5.9 years left. So I don't know how long it will take, but it does seem that at this moment, our culture is struggling to find a new balance between the two extremes, between being sensitive to the plight of others and not stifling genuine dialogue or freedom of expression. Since all three of the comics I've mentioned, Bill Maher, Jerry Seinfeld, and South Park, have focused on colleges in particular, let's look at a couple of current examples. Last week, Western Washington University, where my daughter attends, as you may have heard, had to cancel classes because of several threatening comments that were made on social media toward students of color. It turns out the threats were made by a 19-year-old student reportedly upset because of recent talk about changing the school's Viking mascot to something less sinister and more inclusive. The student has been found, arrested, charged with a felony, and is now in extremely hot water, as he should be. The controversy itself began after a professor raised the question, hypothetically, of whether or not the Viking mascot represents the university's commitment to diversity and creating an inclusive environment on campus. This is a great question for sure, especially at WWU, which is not very diverse. Although the university president says he's only ever received one letter questioning the use of the Viking mascot, the professor's question has sparked controversy. Student union leaders have begun suggesting alternatives, including a fern. Which, as you might imagine, has sparked some controversy of its own. So here, what? A fern. A fern. Yeah. I like ferns. And there's a lot of them in Western Washington. You have one at your house. So we've got some folks voting for ferns. For those who are watching from WWU, ferns are okay from the Unitarians. So here's another example. A couple weeks ago, the University of Ottawa canceled a yoga class geared towards students with disabilities that had been going on since 2008. The initial reason given was because of concerns over cultural appropriation, expressed by some students in an email stating that cultures yoga originates from experienced oppression, cultural genocide, and diasporas due to the colonialism of Western supremacy. And this point, again, I think has some real merit. There's even an organization, the Hindu American Foundation, that started a Take Back Yoga campaign in 2008 over concerns that it's becoming too commercialized in our culture. And as a white male, in particular, it's difficult for me to even imagine the insult added to injury when an exploited, marginalized group's most sacred practices are usurped by the very ones who've demonized and destroyed their culture. I get it. At the same time, when I consider all that's going on in our world right now, like income inequality, giving, as Bernie Sanders says, the top 1% of 1%, almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%, or the institutional racism that has kept millions of African Americans and other minority populations in poverty, an era of mass incarceration that has locked them away, taken away their rights to vote, and prevented them from accessing quality education, homes, and jobs, and killed them in the streets with impunity, or our nation's xenophobic responses to the refugee crises around the world, including south of our nation's own border, towards all those wonderful, beautiful Latino children in our own nation who live in fear of being deported or having their families deported or of not being able to go to a university because of where they were born, or of the environmental degradation that is now destroying our planet, or of the courageous, impassioned young students in the 60s and 70s who helped give us civil rights and bring an end to the Vietnam War. I can't help but be a little disappointed that the campus controversies making headlines today are about mascots and yoga. It makes me wonder if Bill Maher has a point, that scolding has taken the place of action. Are we taking some things too seriously and other things not seriously enough? And it's this question of seriousness that I want us to consider. But to understand why, it's first necessary to understand a little bit about the biology, neurology, and function of humor in our lives. For humor and its expression, laughter, is an autonomic biological phenomenon that has evolved, presumably to help us survive in some way. Firstly, humans may be the only creatures to tell jokes, but we are not the only animals that laugh. Other apes and monkeys laugh when they play and tease each other, which sounds very much like human laughter, right? Hoo, 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 hoo. Ha, ha, ha. And although you've probably never heard them, rats and mice also laugh, among other creatures, especially when they're tickled, which they seem to enjoy quite a lot. They communicate with each other at a frequency that we can't hear, so if you ever had a pet mouse or rat, you might not have heard them laughing at you. But with the use of the right technology, scientists can listen to these high-pitched giggles of mice and rats when they tickle their tummies. And they enjoy it so much that you can watch them chase the scientists' hands around their pens for more tickling. They enjoy being tickled. They enjoy laughing. No one seems to know for sure how laughter exactly helps us survive, but it's thought that one, it helps us bond with others, and two, it reduces stress by making us feel better about things, especially weighty things. Bonding with others is important because we are social animals, whether we like to believe it or not, dependent upon others for our protection as well as for gathering and sharing resources, especially when we're young, which may be why children in particular are so playful, and why human infants begin smiling as early as 5 weeks old and become ticklish just 6 to 8 weeks old, followed by laughing at 4 months. We develop a sense of humor before we crawl or walk. And because laughing is a social phenomenon, contagious, the parents or caregivers bond by laughing with those sweet little angels. As I've already mentioned, we don't usually laugh by ourselves, even when we do find something funny. We also can't tickle ourselves. Have you ever tried? Doesn't work. Give it a shot if you want. Laughter is something that bonds us to others and something that we share with our friends. And like other animals, play causes us to laugh, especially wrestling, chasing, and teasing each other. Humans are able to take such humor to the very next level by poking fun of each other, the way adolescents often do when they're together, making fun of each other. And of course, we don't have to physically poke each other to get a laugh anymore. We can tell jokes, which tickle the mind with thoughts and ideas, crazy thoughts and ideas. In fact, just hearing laughter causes our brains to initiate a laughter response autonomically. And this is why those television series, so many of them, use laugh tracks to help convince us the show must be funny. They don't have any impact on me. It's why I never liked Friends, the series. And sometimes we'll laugh with others, even if we don't know what they're laughing about. As for the neurology of laughter, brain imaging and research has shown that laughter mostly involves the emotional centers of the brain, primarily the amygdala and hypothalamus, which are also those areas responsible for primitive emotions like fear and anger, suggesting that our sense of humor is, again, an autonomic emotional response that is very ancient, very primitive, and instinctive. So we may be able to repress our laughter if we think we shouldn't laugh, but we can't help finding funny what we find funny, any more than we can help feeling afraid or being angry. So I was at first a little surprised to learn that laughter in humans also involves the frontal cortex, which isn't very developed, as you know, in other laughing animals like mice and rats. But as I dug deeper, I learned, as one article explains, that during laughter, the cortical frontal inhibition ceases. Cortical frontal inhibition ceases. In other words, laughter impacts the frontal part of our brains, the thinking part, by causing it to lose control, by keeping it from preventing us from laughing, from cracking up. When it comes to laughter, we really can't help ourselves. If something strikes us as funny, we laugh, whether it's appropriate or not. So that's a little bit about the biology and the neurology of laughter, but what makes something funny to us? There's a lot of theories about this too, but the one that's getting a lot of attention these days is behavioral psychologist Peter McGraw's benign violation theory. Benign violation theory. According to McGraw, humor happens somewhere between complete harmlessness and violating our cultural taboos. He says it's trying to find this sweet spot between being too tame and boring people and being too risque and offending people. Exactly where we're at today. In his book, The Humor Code, McGraw explains, a dirty joke trades on moral or social violations. Puns can be seen as linguistic violations. Sarcasm violates conversational rules by meaning the opposite of what is said. And tickling involves violating someone's physical space in a benign way. If this is so, then something isn't funny if it isn't at least a little offensive. If there isn't a violation. It's okay to laugh at all those funniest home videos when people fall off of trampolines or jump into an empty swimming pool, right? Why? Why is it okay to laugh? Because the host always tells us nobody got hurt. That's the rule on that show. It's a benign violation. But most of us don't laugh when others are seriously injured. At the same time, the chicken crossing the road joke doesn't get many laughs because it isn't edgy. It's too benign. So nowadays, and thank goodness in my opinion, our younger and better generation thinks racially insensitive and sexist jokes go too far over the line into violation. Racism and sexism are not laughing matters because they really hurt people. There's nothing benign about them. They are only violation. Think about the controversy in our own community a couple years ago when a local bar featured a disgusting drink called date grape. Date grape. Which incensed a lot of people because rape is not a laughing matter. So the fact that older comedians like Bill Maher, Jerry Seinfeld, and the writers of South Park, Trey Parker, and Matt Stone, are finding that their humor isn't so funny to today's college students should not be surprising because the line between what's benign and offensive is moving as our culture becomes more diverse and inclusive and our society more global. Some of these older comedians are falling out of favor because they can no longer find that sweet spot. The line has moved. At the same time, we should take into account that humor and humus share the same root. That's why dirty jokes are so funny, because humor is humus. Humor is earthy, dirty. Humor and humus also share the same root as what? Human. Human. So it's human to tell dirty, rotten jokes. Jokes that are a little off color. When discussing dirty jokes in his book, The Soul of Sex, theologian Thomas More reminds us of how the Greeks used to put statues of Priapus in their gardens as scarecrows. Priapus, if you don't know, is a short, pot-bellied god with a constant erection. This is the point of humor, he says, to scare away all the winged spirits, our lofty thoughts, our airy ideas, our flighty opinions, and our otherworldly aspirations. So humor, again, must include some kind of violation of the things that we hold most airy, most sacred, in order to actually be funny. They must bring us down to earth, to humus. And in so doing, humor has this wonderful power to help lighten our load. This is why inappropriate jokes often emerge in the wake of great tragedies, because they help us make our loads lighter by making light of the things weighing most heavily upon us. Humor is a coping mechanism that eases our burdens. So on the one hand, humor is necessary for our mental and emotional well-being. It's autonomic, meaning we can't help finding things funny that we find funny. And what we do find funny usually involves a violation of a cultural taboo. That's what humor is. But on the other hand, humor has to be benign enough that nobody actually gets hurt. That's why we loved the Three Stooges, at least I did for those of my generation. They were like superheroes. They couldn't get hurt, despite the slapstick. Because we know we should not laugh at the expense of others. To conclude then, I must admit I'm still not sure the best way to find the right balance between these two changing dynamics. But recently I got some help from Bryn Butler, daughter of Jeff Butler and Cindy Phillips, members of our congregation. We were having Thanksgiving dinner at their house when Bryn asked me what great philosophical quandaries I'm contemplating these days. When I told her I've been stumped by the tension between political correctness and humor, between being sensitive to others and our freedom of expression, she mentioned that trying to learn a second language has helped her with this very issue. While researching the best ways to learn another language, she's discovered the experts all agree on two things: that we must remain open to communicating even if we don't understand each other, and we must be willing to make mistakes. It reminded me of an incident just a few years ago when I referred to a transgender woman as he. She responded very kindly but directly by saying, "You know, I can't be your friend if you refer to me as he." Having not had the opportunity to know a lot of transgender people at that point, I didn't realize the best language to use, and really appreciated her helping me to understand that I should refer to people according to their gender identities. But the real point here is that she didn't scold me for my unintentional insult. She used it as a teaching moment, and I took it as a learning moment. We both had to risk communicating and remain open to making and allowing for mistakes. I personally think it's a mistake for college students to protest Bill Maher for making generalizations about Islam, and that canceling yoga classes in the name of political correctness is taking things a little too far. But I also realize I could be mistaken. At the same time, I agree that comedy that perpetuates injustice against marginalized groups isn't funny. It's not comedy. And perhaps this is really the best that any of us can do, and the best that we should expect from each other. That we should risk saying what we believe is true, laugh at what we find funny, and remember that in all we say and do, we should bring no harm. Thank you.
And of course, laughter can also be used for connection if carefully used. And our last song is about connecting with people. It's in your turquoise hymnal again. It's called Building Bridges. It's actually built as a round, and I'm going to put her on the spot, but I'm going to ask Linda Green to help me lead this today because I don't see very many choral people out there. Linda's there. She's got a good, strong voice. I'm going to start up here until we get going, and then I'm going to step down, and I'll lead this part. If Linda, if you're okay with leading these people over here, we'll just break it in two. Okay, if you'll give me a pitch, here we go. Stand, would you please, as you're willing and able, and we'll get this one rolling. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you. Will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, with all of our voices and sweet harmony. Friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
The benediction is from Rumi. Let yourself be drawn by the stronger pull of that which you truly love. Amen, blessed be, salam alaikum, and shalom.
Shalom Haverim, Shalom Haverim, Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Haverim, Shalom Haverim, Shalom, Shalom.
I love it how you do the rounds.